Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rift News, the show most of you are going to watch because you are too lazy to look up information about the preseason. To be fair, I'm just gonna shove you in the right direction because Riot released their news videos themselves. Now, before we start, I very quickly wanna mention that I activated the join button. It should be like $2 and you get a badge and emotes that you can use in the comments. It's nothing massive, I will probably use it for private posts where I will tease future videos. And as of right now, we have 16 awesome members, so thank you. At least it's cheaper than Twitter. Anyway, preseason 2023 just started. We talked about all of these changes a while ago, and Riot released the summary of that patch themselves, so very quickly, let's just sum up the summary. We're getting a new Chemtech Drake that simply gives you normal buffs, and who also enhances the jungle plants. Junglers will now have their own companion, which they can level up by jungling. The new minimap will show junglers the optimal jungle pathing, which should help new junglers. There is also the new expanded ping wheel. We are also getting 3 new tank items, as well as the return of Shojin and Rod of Ages. Of course, since the preseason is here, the ranked season is also over. And unfortunately, I have to say that for the first time since Season 2, I didn't even do my placements for the skin. Which means that for the first time since Victorious Jarvan, I just couldn't be bothered. And I'm totally fine with it because Riot also has other games that I care about. However, if there is one thing that pretty much everyone cares about at all times, it is skins. So why don't we have a look at the new skins on PvE? Now, as we cover these skins, you may notice that Aram in the background looks a bit different. We will talk about that in just a second. First, let's have a look at the Christmassy skins. The skin line is called Winterblessed, with the first one being Diana. Based on the animations alone, this has to be a legendary skin. Not only is the swinging of her blade more graceful, which makes her feel more like an ice witch, but the spell effects themselves are quite massive. Next, there is Warwick, who looks a bit like an icy demon. I mean, he has crystallized horns, and all the icy parts together turn red when he's enraged. Also, he has a barrel with a piece of ice on his back. In his recall, he becomes peaceful, but then a red bird flies into the barrel and he becomes enraged again. I assume all of that will be explained in the skin's lore. Then there is Shaco, who at first sight looks a bit more like an Arclight skin. There are loads of gold and white on this one. But the spell effects still cover him in snow. Also, his boxes have really cool icy attacks. And in his recall, he summons tiny doll versions of the other skins. Speaking of which, one of them is Swain, who is finally getting a skin too. And this one looks a bit like a Victorious skin. This one has a bunch of gold and purple on him, with the spell effects being purple too. All of them still have icy and snowy effects, but the colors don't really feel like a winter skin. With that said, I do like the ultimate. The wings remind me of Christmas ornaments, and his head turns into what I believe is a wolf mask, which might be referencing Warwick. Also, he is probably the evil king of this skin line because in his recall he is releasing the evil red birds. Next up there is Zilean. This one is pretty good. The model is great and the spell effects are amazing. With that said, the spell effects are a bit too flashy and they cover up the entire screen. Also, in his recall, Zilean rewinds one of Swain's birds back, which is a cool detail. And then there is Zoe, who is leaning away a bit from the Christmassy theme, even though it is a winter skin. But that could be because visually she is referencing the Central and Eastern European traditions. And it still looks awesome with all the golden snowy effects. Fun fact, her pedal star is being shot out by a sheep. It is the very same sheep you can see in her recall. Also, I have to point out that in her splash art, her head is the size of her entire body. And lastly, Warwick is the one who's getting the prestige skin, turning his eyes into almost KDA-styled pink. Also, there are some changes on his model, including a different claw, a new crystal on his back, and some new golden spell effects. If anything, I learned that the new splash art is doing wonders to people. and I'm not one of them. But that's it for the skin previews. All the new emotes and icons will be ripped from PBE soon, so they will come in the upcoming days. Stop right there! I am from the future that has already data mined PBE. First of all, Winterblessed Diana has some extra features. She has a couple of references about Frozen, namely killing snowmen. She also has some extra snow in her footsteps, and just like the Empyrean Pike, when Diana gets a pentakill, she covers the entire rift in snow. She also gets a crown when she ults. Next, PBE also revealed Ashen Knight Mordekaiser, who actually looks like an Ashen Knight. For the first time since Pike, people are actually happy about this skin. I mean, let's be honest, this is amazing. But it gets better, because when you get ultied by Mordekaiser, the game actually plays Dark Souls styled music. Speaking of which, Warwick also has his own chasing music. But we also got a bunch of new emotes. There is the Confused Warwick, Happy Poro, Confused Mordekaiser, and Creepy Diana. Then we also got 7 new emotes for TFT. There is one for Nomzi, Kaisa, Set and Alistar, and 3 new ones for Misfortune. Then we got a new set of Victorious emotes, which also comes in with the Victorious Little Legend. Also a new emote for Double Up, and finally Hyper Roll. We can also mention that, of course, there is also a bunch of chroma skins. Lastly, we have one more very important thing. Just like last year, we got the Ornn ward, which was teasing that Ornn would appear in the big cinematic. This time, we got a totally random Darkin Aatrox ward, which really seems to be teasing that Aatrox is gonna be the big main character of this year's cinematic. Or next year's. It depends on when they are releasing it. Regardless, I hope this is gonna lead into teasing the new Darkin champion. Which of course many are gonna guess, hey, maybe there is a Darkin event after all. But last time we also got a big cinematic and we got nothing after that. So this time, I'm not so sure about it. But right now, that is it. Now, I have to say that all of these skins are definitely winter-themed skins, but they don't really feel Christmassy. And from all of those, Shaco already has a winter skin, and Zillion has 2, so this will be his 3rd one. Didn't Riot have a special picking process for what champions will have what skin lines? Anyway, as I mentioned, that Aram looks different, right? There is a new vertical perspective? Is that a new objective that is reminiscing a game mode? No, it's just an Aram update. Now, to be fair, this Aram update is pretty cool. But I was really hoping that we would get at least one new game mode this year. All we got was Ultimate Spellbook and All for One and Earth and All for One and Earth and Earth and All for One, and I don't think this is even gonna be Poro King. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's have a look at the update. With the new PBE being up, Riot decided to give players a new experience in Aram, which is planned to be released on live servers in patch 12.22 and 23. At the beginning, Riot Maxwell introduced himself as the new design lead on the mode team on League, with the mode team dealing with everything from rotating game modes to Aram. It is really cool that we now have a Rioter that we can funnel our feedback towards. However, the players who want new game modes are a bit starving. First, they touch on the least interesting part: balancing. We all know that some champions are simply difficult to balance on Aram, so here come more changes. Omnivamp and Lifesteal will be reduced by 50% against minions. This is probably to prevent AD carries from resetting their health after every fight. They are also changing long-range poke damage. Currently on Aram, if you deal damage from 1000 units away, you will deal 15% less damage. Now additionally, if you go over the 1000 units up to 2000 units away, the damage will be reduced further from 15% up to 30%. This is a heavy nerf to the long-range pokers like Xerath, Varus or Jace. And as a reminder, this reduction does not affect ultimate abilities. Lastly, all melee champions will have increased magic resistance from 10 up to 15. They mentioned that in general these changes will combat the frustrating part of Aram, like healing back to full from minions or dealing with AP Kai'Sa. They also mentioned that champion-specific balancing will continue, but they will introduce specific stat modifiers that will help them balance all champions at once. For example, multiple assassins had to be buffed to be viable, and multiple enchanters had to get their healing reduced. So, here are the new modifiers. Resource regeneration is getting tweaked for champions who are supposed to spend all their energy and run away. The issue is that in Aram, you are constantly fighting, there is no running away. So, Akali, Kennen, Lee Sin and Zed will have their energy regeneration increased by 20%. Some tenacity tweaks will also help people not die from stun locks. This will affect all squishy champions, like Akali, Echo, Elise, Evelynn, Fizz, Kassadin, Katarina, Kayn, Kha'Zix, LeBlanc, Pyke, Qiyana, Rek'Sai, Rengar, Talon and Zed. And lastly, ability haste is being tweaked for Ashe. I think it's obvious why it's happening. It's one thing to get constantly poked. It's another thing to get constantly poked and slowed so that you can get constantly poked. So Ashe is getting minus 20 ability haste. But that's it for all the notes regarding balancing, so now let's have a look at what is actually happening with the bridge. First of all, Aram is getting Icy Hex Gates. They have one simple purpose, to increase the time in fights. They will be active from the very beginning and they will teleport you to the outer tower. After that tower is destroyed, the Hex Gate will permanently be linked to your inhibitor. So once the enemy is in your base, you can use it to flank them. Also, apparently, you can use the enemy Hex Gates. Another new feature are falling towers. In the past, whenever you destroyed a tower, a piece of the bridge would fall down. It was a cosmetic thing that not a lot of people knew about. But now, after destroying a tower, the tower itself will crumble and create new terrain. This one also has a very simple purpose, to give some variety to a single lane. Now there will be choke points, which will hopefully not slow the game down. I have played a lot of Alterac Volley, I know what choke points can do. Lastly, Aram will see to one more change. This new bush. I have to admit, Wild Rift has some interesting gameplay with the 4 bushes on Aram in the middle. Now we got 3, so we're getting there. I mean, Maokai players will love that one. Next up, Riot is also improving the quality of life during picking. First of all, you will now see who bought the boost, so you can thank people. Also now they can't buy the boost moments from the game starting, so your skins won't just randomly change. And finally, you'll be able to see what champions will give you a chest if you get an S rank. And lastly, at the very end of the post, Riot mentioned one more thing. To celebrate the newly updated Aram, Riot will host the last Clash of the Year in the Howling Abyss. That's right, be ready for 8 team brackets of 3 matches, with everyone having 2 roles per game. You can start lining up for this clash on December the 5th, with the tournament days being the 10th and 11th. And anyone who participates will get a limited time Aram Clash icon. Here I have to say that even though this is not a new game mode which this game desperately needs, I'm still happy to see that Riot is supporting casual play a bit more. I'll be honest, League as an esport? Pretty good. League as a grindy ranked game? It's fine, but it's not what attracts masses to the game. I feel like a bit more focus on the casual community is necessary. But that is it for the League updates, so now let's have a look at what is new in TFT. Here, Monsters Attack hit PBE yesterday, so we can pretty much cover all that's there. First of all, everyone likes to talk about Little Legends, so we already mentioned that the new Lux and Ahri are coming to TFT. But now we learned that we will be getting the new Super Squad sprite from the beginning of the pass, and the new Star Guardian Talker is gonna be the premium exclusive from the pass, with the Star Guardian Talker basically being Oriana's ball. But then we have the 3 new Little Legends. There is the one I might be aiming for, which is Whiskers. This one has a Star Guardian version, a Dark Star version, a Stitched version, but also a Nemesis version, which is resembling Fiddlesticks, and what I assume is the legendary, which is the Super Squad version. Then there is Grizzle the Koala Bear, with Grizzle also having Star Guardian, Dark Star, Nemesis, and Super Squad, but he also has the unique Groovy variant. And lastly, we are getting the one that a lot of people like, which is Baron. Personally, I really like the normal version, which is referencing League. There is also the Celestial Scourge variant, which is referencing Legends of Runeterra, the Odyssey variant, which is referencing the Odyssey Baron. Also remember, Odyssey was made by Mordog. Nemesis is Fiddlesticks, just like for everyone else. Star Guardian is the one that was teased before, with the Super Squad once again being the special one. Now, when it comes to boards, we didn't get any official info yet, but the post pretty much revealed everything. So first of all, for the basic boards, there are the Star Guardian rooftops, which also have a few variations around the threat units. There is also the new Super Squad board, which, based on the quality, I will assume that's the mythic board from the end of the pass. And then of course there is the Star Guardian class, which, even though it was not confirmed yet, I think it's pretty safe to assume that this will be the random drop from the eggs. Anyway, we then got a gameplay overview post. This one goes through all the traits, which we have already talked about last time. And if you are actually interested in all the details, I would recommend you go and watch Mordog's video, even though it is a really long one. So, for this video, let's go through these very quickly. Star Guardians returned, but this time they are only increasing their own mana regeneration. Also, Syndra and Yuumi share the Heart trait. Whenever Heart champions cast a spell, they increase ability power for all their teammates. Gadgeteen are units that craft new modified weapons that only last for 2 rounds. From these units, the new legendary Nunu is the Singed of this set. He will run around while he's hitting people. Laser Corps summon drones that deal magic damage to their targets. And Mordekaiser is the special one with the Ace trait. Ace works just like old ninjas. You can either have 1 or 4 aces at once. The trait won't be active if you are in between. And in Mordekaiser's case, it gives him an execute. Also, as you can see, Mordekaiser's ability looks amazing in this set. Then there is the admin trait, which we talked about last time. That's the one that you design yourself. There are 8 different causes and 8 different effects, with 4 admin units in total. There are also 3 civilians. As long as a civilian is alive, all the other units will fight harder to protect them, giving them mana every few seconds. Jenna is a special unit here, as she can forecast the weather. If it's rainy, she gives mana at the start, if it's sunny, she gives a shield, and if it's windy, she gives her allies damage. Next, there are the underground units, which is the losing streak trait. Every round you get stacks of heist. You get 1 for a victory and 2 for a loss. And at every 7 stacks you have the option to cash out or wait for a better reward. And lastly, the Mecha Prime trait allows you to merge 3 mechs into one big one. Funnily enough, here for the first time in history, not only is Leona a legendary unit, but she is also an offensive unit. She fires a giant laser beam that burns the enemy until they die or Leona dies. Now, while that is it for all the traits showcased in this post, of course, there is more. And once again, we can find the rest of the traits in Mordog's video. However, once again, that video is very long. So let me very quickly mention the rest. Ox-Force gains attack range and attack speed at low health. Once per combat, they also become invulnerable for 1.5 seconds. Threat units have no traits and instead their stats are increased. Supers are 3 low-cost units. They get 20% bonus damage by default, but that damage gets increased for every 3-star unit you have. So this is the hyper-roll comp. But besides the origins, there are also the classes. Defenders are the protectors who taunt. Spellslingers fire a damaging orb every 5 seconds. Raycon units get increased range. If anyone gets close, they dash away and cast their ability. Renegades deal bonus damage and they deal even more damage when they are the last one standing. Mascot units heal their allies. After they die, they cheer for their team, increasing the healing. Pranksters spawn target dummies at low health. Brawlers now increase health based on percentage. Aegis is Mystic. Super shots get stacking damage every 4 seconds. And finally, duelists get increased movement speed and attack speed for every attack. Did you notice it? For the first time, there are no assassins. And that's because there are hackers. Hackers get Omnivamp and they spawn Hecarim, who rides one of your units to the enemy's backline. This is a clever fix to the assassin's problem, because you are essentially turning one of your units into an assassin. But you can also send a tank back there. I would also love to talk about all the units, but you know, there is a lot of them. So let's talk about the more notable ones. Blitzcrank is back! Oh? Oh, he doesn't have a grab! That's right, for the first time, Blitzcrank is not grabbing anyone. He simply has a shield now. Yuumi is also back, and Mordo confirmed that she was designed to be annoying. She now fires a big missile at the furthest enemy. So even though you are not gonna be positioning against Blitzcrank, you might be positioning against Yuumi. Also annoying is gonna be Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz has low mana and low damage, but he will stun the unit that dealt the most damage. So even though Vel'Koz is not gonna deal too much damage himself, he is gonna be a stunning machine. Then from the legendary units, Aphelios has the ability to choose his ability from 3 guns. Fiddlesticks just waits for your unit to die. He gains 20 ability power per death, and then after everyone is dead or when he reaches 60% health, he ults straight into the middle of the enemy team. This sounds exactly like Fiddlesticks. Urgot fires a giant tsunami that pulls all enemies closer. He also has a small chance to get bonus loot and gold for every enemy hit. And that chance increases with ability power. But that's really it for the important units, with important being quite subjective. Of course, there are also new augments and new hero augments, but without covering every single unit, you simply won't have the context. Lastly, we can also mention some big item updates. BF Sword no longer gives 10 AD and instead gives 10% AD. That's because in the past, AD units simply didn't need more AD, they had a lot of base damage by themselves. So now, this item is gonna scale a lot better. Glove no longer gives dodge and instead gives 20% crit. Zephyr now also gives bonus attack speed. Dragonclaw now has less magic resistance and a lot more regeneration. Deathblade now gives 60% AD. Giant Slayer was just split into percentage AD and flat AP. Shojin now overall gives a little bit less mana. Infinity Edge now gives a little bit more crit, but it now also allows your abilities to crit. That's because with the new changes, physical abilities can't crit on their own. You will need either Infinity Edge or Jeweled Gauntlet for them to crit. However, this also means that Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet are not good together. You either need one for ADs or the other for APs. Static Shift now also gives AP, which means that this is a pretty good AP item with the Magic Shred. There is also a new item that comes from a belt and a glove. You will no longer get Banshee's Claw, and instead you will get Guard Breaker, which gives you more damage when you are fighting against shields. Quicksilver now gives a lot more attack speed, making this a pretty good offensive item. And lastly, blue buff now reduces your mana by 10, and it also gives you 10 mana for every takedown you score within 3 seconds of casting an ability. But that's it. At the end of the post they mentioned the dates. PBE is up right now, but the full release is planned for December the 7th. But that's it for TFT as well, so quickly let's have a look at Legends of Runeterra. Legends of Runeterra just got a very quick snapshot. The focus of the snapshot was on the community. Riot really wants your feedback to shape what Legends of Runeterra can become. For example, they already know that people want to see reworked champions in the upcoming rotation. And soon they will release a blog post where they will talk about the feedback they got. Also, they really want to know how people want gauntlets and tournaments to change. And of course, they mentioned that the championship is starting soon, because Riot kind of forgot to do that during Worlds. And we should also mention that with the newest patch, Riot also released a bunch of new skins. We got new Spirit Blossom skins for Ahri, Evelynn, Kindred, Master Yi, Teemo and Yasuo, with 2 Sandstorm skins for Echo and Pyke. From all of these I have to point out Evelynn, who got a new card for every single one of her thralls. But that's it for Legends of Runeterra 2, so now let's have a look at Wild Rift. In Wild Rift we got a cinematic for the new Jhin skin. And that's kinda it, we talked about all the other things last time as well. Lastly, in Valorant the new championship is right behind the corner. And now you can buy their new bundle of returning guns. 50% of all the money from that will go to Riot's Social Impact Fund. So at least you don't feel that bad for really pricey knives. But that's it for Valorant 2, which wraps up this episode of Rift News. There was a lot of TFT news and a lot of Little Legends and other skins and a lot of League skins, which, you know, it's kinda all we are getting in League of Legends these days. But at least there was the really big Aram update. It's really cool to see that Riot is also focusing on the casual community, because God knows they need it. If only we got some game modes to support it.